As you all know, sports have their highs and they have their lows. It's just a part of not only the game, but of life itself. Over the years, professional sports has seen its fair share of infamous moments which frequently defines the lives of the people involved. Some, but not all, of those involved in the moments we're going to discuss in this video had to deal with the ugly side of sports fans and were constantly reminded of their mistakes by the masses for many years afterward. Fans get angry when things don't go their way. That's just the way it is. And there will be a few scenarios we talk about today showing off just how angry the sports fan can get. Sports' greatest weakness is also its greatest strength. Sports as a whole are as popular as they are because of the passionate fan bases that support them. But, as I can personally attest to with some of my favorite teams, passion can quickly evolve into hatred if not nurtured properly. Now let's talk about some infamous, life-defining sports moments. It may also be helpful if you take a pause at some point in this video to try and put yourself in the shoes of some of the people involved to see what this was all like from their perspective. Let's begin in the realm of baseball and head back to 2003. It was a dark day in baseball history as the Cubs played the Marlins in the NLCS, one win away from a date with the Yankees. The Cubs were up 3-0 in the 8th inning, and a ball was hit high down the left field line. Moises Alou jumped near the wall and came back down to the ground much angrier than when he went up. A fan had supposedly interfered with the play, and Alou couldn't make the catch. That fan's name? Steve Bartman. After the play, the Marlins scored 8 runs in the inning, and the Cubs ended up losing that game as well as Game 7. Their season was over, their nearly century-long curse continued, and Steve Bartman felt the wrath of Cubs fans everywhere. After his private info leaked online after the game, he was forced to get personal police protection at his own home. Bartman was going up against the worst version of sports fans. Thankfully for him and Chicago, their curse finally came to an end after a marathon-long Game 7 victory in Cleveland in 2016. The best part of it all, the Cubs gave Bartman a ring. Let's now head to the NFL and deal with a more recent event in Chicago that took place earlier this year. The Bears and Eagles played in the NFC wildcard round, and the game was extremely tight. 16-15 was the score. The Bears had the chance of winning the game with a field goal, and their season was in the hands of kicker Cody Parkey. His first kick was negated by a last-second timeout from the Eagles. To this day, that was the last kick Cody Parkey has ever made on an NFL field. On his next attempt, it seemed like he had missed it on his own in the infamous, quote, double doink, when in further review, it looked like the kick was tipped by Trayvon Hester. That didn't stop Bears fans from ripping Cody to shreds after the game, and fans from around the world raining down the memes. Parkey didn't have a great season, which made some fans feel justified in continuing with their hatred, even after it seemed his kick was tipped. But nonetheless, Cody Parkey became a name fans everywhere knew by the next morning. Another dreadful moment for Chicago sports fans. Let's now go back to baseball and head back to 1986. The Mets and the Red Sox played in the World Series that year. Oh dear God, I got emotional saying that. Just give me a second to compose myself. The Mets and the Red Sox played in the World Series that year, and it turned out that Game 6 was the biggest game in a series that lasted 7 games. The Mets were down 3-2 heading into Game 6 and were down 5-3 heading into the last of the 10th inning. A couple of base hits and a wild pitch later, and the Mets had tied the game. With a runner on, Mookie Wilson hit a ground ball to first that went right through the legs of Red Sox first baseman Bill Buckner, and that was the ball game. The Mets took Game 6 and capitalized on that momentum to win Game 7 and win one of the most memorable World Series in baseball history. That missed ball in Game 6 changed Bill Buckner's life forever. He received death threats, he was booed by his own fans, and from that point on, he was defined by a single play in a single game. Buckner came before my time, of course, so the only time I ever really got to see him live was in 2008, when he threw out the first pitch at Fenway, and he received a standing ovation from Red Sox fans, which was really cool to see, and it was a great moment to put the close on a pretty rough journey for him. Buckner unfortunately passed away a few months ago, and I think it's best if we as fans remember the good things about him, like how he never struck out 3 times in a game before. I think only 15 or 16 players in Major League history have done that, or how he amassed over 2,700 hits in his career, instead of defining not only his career, but his life by one miscue in the field. Merkel's boner. No, that isn't sexual innuendo, it's a reference to rookie Fred Markle and the 1908 New York Giants. The Giants were in the middle of a pennant race in mid-September and were playing in a very important game against the Cubs. The game was tied in the last of the 9th, there were runners on first and third with Merkel on first, and now before I continue I need to tell you a relevant rule, official rule 4.09. It's a rule that basically states that a runner cannot score if the third out is made by forcing a runner out at any base. So continuing on here, it's first and third, there's a base hit up the middle, the crowd is going nuts, fans are flooding the field, and the runner from third comes home. Merkel over on first decides that he's going to turn around and walk back to the dugout because in his head, the game's over, right? There's a runner at third, he's coming home. Obviously, the guy from center field isn't going to throw him out. The game's over. But Cubs second baseman Johnny Evers decided to use those baseball smarticles to save this game for the Cubs. As fans were running on the field, he told the center fielder to throw him the ball. The second baseman threw the ball to him and the force out was made at second. The story gets really hairy and it involves stuff like the ball that was hit completely disappearing, the umpires calling the game due to darkness because they couldn't remove the fans from the field, and some other things. I'm not going to cover it all here. It's definitely a good read though if you're interested. At the end of the day, that was the last play of the game. The runner from third didn't count and Merkel was called out at second. That game was a turning point in the Giants season, and because of Merkel's mistake running the bases, for the rest of his days everybody called him Bonehead for his quote censurable stupidity on the bases. Eventually he got an ovation at the Giants Old Timers game in 1950, so he, along with a few other of the people we've talked about so far, eventually got some form of acceptance from the fans who were once at their throats. We haven't touched on basketball yet, so let's head there. The Cavaliers found themselves playing in the NBA Finals against the Warriors for the fourth straight season in 2018. Game 1's at the Oracle Arena. It's a tight game, tied at 107 with less than 5 seconds to go. The free throw is missed. J.R. Smith gets the rebound. He starts running away with the ball. Cavs fans are losing their minds. They don't know what's going on. LeBron James pops a blood vessel out of anger. He doesn't know what's going on. The situation is absolutely unprecedented. J.R. Smith forgot the score. It's the NBA Finals. The Cavs had a shot to take Game 1 in Oracle Arena, and J.R. Smith forgot the score. The fans are dying, the memes start flying, and J.R. Smith, in the span of a handful of seconds, manages to give us one of my favorite screenshots from any game of any sport.
JR, you got to be the dumbest mother.
James, having scored 51 points, couldn't believe his teammate pulled it off. The Warriors ended up beating the Cavs in overtime and eventually swept the series with a blowout in Game 4 as the icing on that rotten cake. After the game, James punched a whiteboard in the locker room out of frustration, and I, for one, definitely don't blame him. When it's all said and done, that may be what everyone remembers most about J.R. Smith, and that's definitely not the kind of thing you want to be remembered for. Now, how can I make a video about infamous sports moments without talking about an event deemed, quote, the most infamous brawl in NBA history? I'm talking about the Malice at the Palace. The Pacers and Pistons played in one of the most hyped up games in the beginning of the 2004 season, as the last time they had played was in the conference finals the previous year. It was a pretty hyped up matchup. Here's how it went down. The Pacers had the game locked down with less than a minute to go. Pacers forward Ron Artest slapped Ben Wallace from behind, which led to a foul, of course. And not today's if you get breathed on, it's a foul kind of foul, but this was a meaty slap. You know, now that I think about it, I really want to see John Boy do a breakdown of this. I'm just gonna break this down like he would from here on. So obviously, Wallace isn't having that, right? He threw some hands, they were separated, yada yada. So Artest goes back to the bench, he gets a towel thrown at him by Wallace, he's losing his mind, and then some fan named John Green throws a Diet Coke at Ron Artest while he's laying on the bench. No, not that John Green. Artest then gets up and starts fighting the wrong fan. He literally gets off the bench, turns around, trying to find this guy who threw a Diet Coke at him, and he starts fighting the wrong guy. He even ran over some guy to get to him, and he severely hurt the guy he ran over. Ben Wallace's brother gets in the mix, punches are flying left and right. After more fighting, Artest starts to walk away, back onto the court. Two more fans charge onto the court, running at him. He's fighting them now. Everyone's fighting each other. The entire place is in pandemonium. It's like a huge game of Mortal Kombat going on. All the while, fans are throwing more stuff onto the fighters. This event, like this part of the video, is a complete mess. Some people were quoted saying that they actually thought some of these players were gonna kill somebody. Pandemonium is literally the only word that I can really use to describe it. It's just bonkers. Please, if you're not going to like or subscribe, at the very least, go on the internet and read more about this whole situation because there's so much more, and the entire thing was just completely nuts. And I didn't even hear about it until earlier this week. After it, the NBA suspended 9 players, fines were going out left and right, some of the fans were suspended from the Pistons court for life, and some of the fans and players were arrested and charged. Oh my God, what a mess. So what's the most infamous sports moment that you can remember? There are tons I didn't include in this video, so let's talk about the ones that I didn't in the comments section. If you enjoyed today's video, let us know by leaving a like on it, as well as subscribing to the channel. We're closing in on 30,000 subscribers, which is just pretty mind-boggling. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you all later.